This weekend is about you. It's an opportunity for you to retreat from your lives for just a few days and to remove the constant stimulation in your external environment that reminds you of who you think you are as a personality. To separate yourself from the people you know and the places you go and the things that you do at the exact same time every single day. Long enough for you to be reminded of what you already know. And every time you learn something new, you make new connections in your brain. That's what learning is. Learning is forging new synaptic connections. And the Nobel Prize laureate Kandel in the year 2000 found that when people learn just one bit of information, they doubled the number of connections in their brain from 1,300 connections to 2,600 connections. Physical evidence as a result of their interaction in the environment, footprints of consciousness. But if they didn't review that information, if they didn't repeat it, if they didn't think about it, those circuits pruned apart within hours or days. So all of this information that you're learning, this philosophy, this theory, this intellectuality, this scientific, spiritual information, begins to change you on a physical level. But that information is for you to do something with it. Because when you apply it, when you personalize it, when you demonstrate it, when you initiate that philosophy, you're going to have to modify your behaviors in some way and do something differently. And if you can get your behaviors to match your intentions, you can get your actions equal to your thoughts. If you can get your mind and body working together, you're going to have a new experience. Now, when you're in the midst of an experience, all 5 senses plug you into the external environment. And as you're seeing, smelling, tasting, feeling, hearing, all of that information is rushing back to your brain. And jungles of neurons are organizing themselves into networks, enriching the philosophical information that you learned intellectually. The moment those neurons string into place, the brain makes a chemical. And that chemical is called a feeling or an emotion. And the moment you feel abundant, the moment you feel healthy, the moment you feel like a leader, the moment you feel like a patient parent, now you are teaching your body emotionally to understand what your mind is intellectually understood. And we can say that knowledge is for the mind and experience is for the body. And in that moment, you're embodying the truth of that philosophy, and you're literally signaling new genes in new ways and rewriting your biological program. Chemically instructing your body to understand what your mind is intellectually understood. But if you've done it once, it means you should be able to do it again. And if you can repeat any experience over and over again, you are going to neurochemically condition your mind and body to work as one. And when the body knows how to do it as well as the mind, or the body becomes the mind, now it's innate in you. It's second nature. It's automatic. It's easy. It's who you are. In fact, you've practiced it so many times, you don't even have to consciously think about it. You know how to do it, but you don't know how you know how anymore. And it becomes like a subconscious computer program. Neurochemically memorizing an internal order that's greater than any condition in your external environment means you're beginning to master that philosophy. So our job then is to go from philosopher to initiate to master. From knowledge to experience to wisdom. From mind to body to soul. From thinking to doing to being. Learning it with your head, practicing with your hands, and knowing it by heart. And you and I have all the biological and neurological machinery to do this. And this is a time in history where it's not enough to know. This is a time in history to know how. And I think that science has become the contemporary language of mysticism. And I think science demystifies the mystical. And the moment you start talking religion or culture or tradition, you divide an audience. But science creates community. And if you can combine a little quantum physics with a little neuroscience, with a little neuroendocrinology, with a little psychoneuroimmunology, with a little epigenetics, they all point the finger at possibility. It's the new science that shows you that you're not doomed by your genes or hardwired to be a certain way for the rest of your life, that we are marvels of adaptability and change. The problem is that most people wait for crisis or trauma or disease or diagnosis or tragedy or loss to finally make up their mind to change. And my message is, why wait? You can learn and change in a state of pain and suffering, or you can learn and change in a state of joy and inspiration. Which would you choose? So then, most people on some level believe that their thoughts have something to do with their destiny. Do you believe that? Raise your hand if you believe it. You do, yes? So here's my question. How many of you actually woke up this morning and consciously created a future? You know why most people don't do it is because they don't believe it's true. If you knew it was true, that your thoughts had an effect on your life, you would never miss a day in creating the life that you wanted. And you would never let any thought slip by your awareness that you didn't want to experience. So I was telling the group yesterday in our workshop that you think 60 to 70,000 thoughts in one day. This is science now. Out of those 60 to 70,000 thoughts that you think in one day, 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts as the day before. Hint. So if you're thinking the same thoughts and you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your life, then your life should stay the same. Because the same thoughts always lead to the same choices. The same choices always lead to the same behaviors. The same behaviors create the same experiences. And the same experiences produce the same feelings and the same emotions. And those same emotions drive your very same thoughts. And your biology, your neurocircuitry, your neurochemistry, your hormones, and even your genetic expression is equal to how you think, how you act, and how you feel. And how you think, how you act, and how you feel is called your personality. And your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. So if you wanted to create a new personal reality, you would have to change your personality, which means you'd have to start thinking about what you've been thinking about and change it. You'd have to become aware of your unconscious habits and behaviors and modify them. And then you would have to look at those emotions that keep you anchored to the past and decide if those emotions belong in your future. You see, most people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality, and it doesn't work. You literally have to become someone else. So the present personality who's sitting here today, called you, has created the present personal reality called your life. So you are here then to begin to become conscious of your unconscious thoughts. Become aware of your automatic habituations and emotional reactions. And the principle in neuroscience says that nerve cells that fire together wire together. So if you insist on thinking the same old thoughts, making the same choices, demonstrating the same behaviors, creating the same experiences that stamp and emboss the same networks of neurons into the same patterns, all for the familiar feeling you call you. You keep firing and wiring those circuits over and over again, you begin to hardwire your brain into a very finite signature. That box in the brain The most commonly fired, neurologically wired set of thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that's acquired through frequent repetition becomes the habit of yourself. And it's just like a box in the brain. And the redundancy of that cycle causes us to become a memorized set of unconscious attitudes, automatic habits and behaviors, emotional reactions, beliefs, perceptions, and attitudes that function like a subconscious computer program. Science says that 95% of who you are by the time you're 35 years old is a memorized set of thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. So now 5% of your conscious mind is going to work against 95% of what you've memorized subconsciously. And you can think positively all you want, but if you've been feeling negatively, that's mind and body in opposition. And you can create your dream board with all your visions and all the things you want in your life, but if you feel unworthy, that's mind and body in opposition. And it's time then to recondition your body to a new mind. And so if you're waking up every single morning and you come to your senses and you open your eyes and you have to stop and think about all your problems, think about all the people you have to see and the places you have to go and the things that you have to do that are just like yesterday. And then you check your cell phone, you check your WhatsApp, you check your texts, you check your Instagram, you check your Facebook, you check your emails, you check the news, you do a little tweet. Now you're plugged into your identity. And then you go through a routine set of behaviors. You've put your slippers on, you put your robe on, you scratch yourself just like yesterday, you make your way to the toilet, you get off the toilet, then you make your cup of coffee, then you open the door, you let the cat out, then you go to the shower, you wash yourself the same routine way. You get done, you dress yourself, you groom yourself, get in your car, you go through your routine, you drive to work the same way you always do, you see the same people that push the same emotional buttons, you do the things that you've memorized and you could do so well. You stop at the grocery store and you turn right, because 90% of the people that enter a grocery store turn right, so you turn right. Then you shop for your same food. Then you do your same workout every time. Then you go home and you eat your meal, you watch your favorite television show. Then you get back and check your emails. Then you get in front of the mirror and you put your lotions, your potions, your creams, you brush your teeth. You do all that stuff. And then you go upstairs, you get in bed, and you read one page out of the book, and boom. You wake up the next morning and here we go again. So if a habit is a redundant set of automatic, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that's acquired through frequent repetition, if you keep doing that for 10 or 20 or 30 years, your body's on autopilot. And it's programmed into a predictable future based on what you did in the past. And you're headed for a genetic destiny. And you've done nothing wrong. You're just taking too long. And so then, when you see the same people and you go to the same places and you do the exact same thing at the exact same time, and you're not being defined by a vision of the future, you are left with the memories of the past, because your brain is a record of the past. It's an artifact of everything you've learned and experienced to this moment. And if you wake up every single morning and search for the familiar feeling called you, and that emotion is connected to a person or a thing or a place or a circumstance in your external environment, the moment you feel that familiar emotion, you are in the past. Because emotions are a record of the past. And if those emotions drive your thoughts, and you can't think greater than how you feel, or feelings have become the means of thinking, then you are thinking in the past. And if you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, you'll keep recreating the same life. So then, When you get up in the morning and you're not being defined by a vision of the future, you're left with the old hardware of the past, and you'll be predictable in your life. And so then, as you begin to see those people and you go to those places, whether it's your boss, your coworkers, your family, your enemies, whatever it is, and you go to a different place at a different time and see those things, it's no longer that your personality is creating your personal reality. Now your personal reality is creating your personality, and you are victim to the environment, because it is the environment that's controlling how you think and feel. And how you think and how you feel is what creates your life. So then, if you're thinking equal to everything that you know in your life, you keep creating the same things in your life. So to change, to truly change, is to be greater than your environment, to be greater than the circumstances in your life, to be greater than the conditions in your world. And every great person in history already knew this. They were defined by some vision of the future, and they were so possessed by that vision that they began to live as if that future reality was happening in the present moment. Couldn't see it, couldn't smell it, couldn't taste it, couldn't feel it, couldn't hear it, but to them it was alive in their mind. So the fundamental question then is, can you believe in a future that you can't see or experience with your senses yet, but you've thought about enough times in your mind that your brain is literally changed to look like the experience has already occurred? The latest research in neuroscience says it's absolutely possible. You can change your brain just by thinking. And can you pick a potential that already exists in the quantum field? And how many potentials exist in the quantum field? Hello. Infinite. A few. Poke the person next to you, please. Give them a little poke. So can you select the new potential that already exists in the quantum field, and can you begin to emotionally embrace that future reality before it's made manifest to such a degree that your body, as the unconscious mind, believes it's in that future reality in the present moment, and you're signaling new genes and new ways to change your body to look like the event has already occurred? Latest research in epigenetics says that's absolutely possible. Now think about this. If there's physical evidence in your brain and body to look like the event has already occurred, physical evidence to look like you've already experienced your future, then you get to relax, because the experience is going to find you. And it's going to come in a way that you least expect. Why? Come on, geniuses, is it too early for you? Because if you can expect it, it's nothing new. If you can predict it, it's the known. It's got to rock your world. It's got to catch you off guard, and it has to leave no doubt that what you did inside of you produced some effect outside of you. And when you can correlate the changes you made inside of you with the effect that you produced outside of you, you're going to pay attention to what you did, and you're going to do it again. And there isn't a person in this room that is so special to be excluded from that phenomenon, that we are all creators. So then, if your environment is controlling how you think and feel, because when you see that person, you have an experience of them already logged in your brain neurologically. You have a neurological network for your boss, for your coworkers, for your friends. And because you experience them, you also have an emotion attached to them. And most people use the conditions in their life to reaffirm their emotional addiction. They need the bad job, they need the poor relationship, they need the difficult circumstances, because they need to feel those emotions. So then, think about this. Would you agree then that new thoughts should lead to new choices? Hello. New choices should lead to new behaviors. New behaviors should create new experiences. New experiences should create new feelings and new emotions. And those new emotions should inspire new thoughts, and that's called evolution, yes? Because as you add a new stitch into the three-dimensional tapestry of your gray matter, when you learn new information and you begin to think about it, your brain is going to begin to fire in new sequences and new patterns and new combinations. Whenever you make your brain work differently, you're changing your mind, because mind is the brain in action. Mind is the brain at work. So the beauty behind all of this, then, is that you begin to learn this information this particular weekend. You are beginning to install the neurological hardware for yourself in preparation for an experience. And the more you can comprehend this information, and the more you begin to think about what you're going to do with it, the more you begin to become a practical person, practically applying this. So then, you can come to the Hay House Conference, you can listen to all the speakers, you can take notes, you can buy the books, you can get the CDs and the downloads, and you can play them in your car on the way to work, and you can play them over and over again. Then you get to work and you're like, you know what your problem is? You need to be a little bit more compassionate. And you over there, you need to forgive. And you know what? You need a little bit more emotional intelligence, and you need a guide to help you through all of that. Everybody is just mystified by the philosophy that's coming out of your mouth. And they start, knocking on your door. Excuse me, can you administer to me? I just need some help here. I think I can fit you in 30 minutes. Come back in 30 minutes. And you become the mystic of your department. And everything's going really well until it's time to go to the company Christmas party. And your best friend calls you up and she says, that person that threw you under the bus, that betrayed you, the one that talked about you and got the promotion instead of you, she's at the Christmas party. All of a sudden, you sit down on your couch and you start thinking about ways to poison her. And then you think, I'll wait till she gets into the women's bathroom, I'll close the door, and then I'll stick her head in the toilet and ask her to change her mind. No, what I'm going to do is I'm going to embarrass her in front of everybody. And you start rehearsing this scene in your mind. And all of a sudden, you realize, oh my God, I went to the Hay House Conference. Damn it. Now I got to do something here. And you sit down on the couch and you begin to think about what you learned. And you say, oh my God, I got to remember to see myself in her. Oh, okay, let me just take a minute. Okay, I need to stay in the present moment. I need to see her best qualities, see myself in her. And as you begin to think about and recall that information, you begin to activate different networks of neurons in your brain. And something amazing happens if you do it properly. The next thing you know, you put yourself into a future scene. The next thing you know, you're rehearsing what you're going to do with that information. You begin to review it, plan your actions. And as you put yourself into the scene, into the equation, you begin to mentally rehearse your actions. The action of mental rehearsal begins to install the neurological hardware in your brain, so you are primed for the experience. You have the circuits in place to use when you get in that scene. And now your brain is no longer a record of the past. Now it's in fact a map to the future. And as you do this over and over again, remembering who you no longer want to be and remembering who you do want to be, you begin to change on a biological level. And if you do it properly and you get your behaviors to match your intentions and your actions equal to your thoughts, and you walk into that scene with your physical body and you would do exactly what the book said or the lecturer said, and you forgive that person, the side effect of that is you are going to feel love. You are going to feel compassion. You are going to open your heart and feel an elevated emotion. And now you're beginning to embody that philosophy. How many people are with me? But if you've done it once, you know, you're not going to be on the stained glass windows in church with one time. You got to be able to replicate that action over and over again until you neurochemically condition your mind and body to become compassion. Now, no person, no thing, no situation in your external environment will move you from that internal state. But you see, most people, they have experiences in their life. And the more elevated the emotion, the more heightened the emotion from the experience, whether it's shock or trauma or betrayal or loss, the moment they feel differently inside of them, they feel altered in some way from that experience emotionally, they pay attention to what caused it in their external environment. And the moment you feel different emotionally, you wake up, the brain takes a snapshot, and that's called a memory. And so then people then have experiences in their life that brand them neurologically and emotionally. And what happens is there's a refractory period of chemicals that's created after an emotional reaction. And if you don't know how to control your emotional reactions to things or people or circumstances, and you allow those emotions to linger for hours or days, that's called a mood. What's up with you? I'm in a mood. Really? What happened? Oh, I'm so glad you asked. This thing happened to me 6 days ago, and I'm just having one long emotional reaction. And if you keep that same refractory period going on for weeks or months, that's called a temperament. Why is he so angry? I don't know. Let's ask him. What's up? Why are you so bitter? Well, this thing happened to me 9 months ago. And I'm memorizing my emotional reaction. And if you keep that same refractory period going on for years on end, that's called a personality trait. And people's personalities are defined by their past. And they wear their emotions on their sleeve because that's who they think they are. But those emotions are just residues from the past. And you can ask that person, why are you this way? And they'll tell you, I am this way because of this experience that happened to me 25 years ago. Which means from a biological standpoint, I haven't been able to change in the last 25 years because I was altered from that experience, and that became my identity. Are you with me still? Now, if those emotions are driving the person's thoughts, their fear, their unworthiness, their insecurity, their hatred, their prejudice, their envy, their jealousy, if those emotions are driving their thoughts and they're turning on different circuits in their brain that produce the same chemicals to feel more envy or jealousy or hatred, the moment they feel those emotions, it drives more thoughts, and they get caught in this loop of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking. The redundancy of that cycle conditions the body to become the mind. And the body is the unconscious mind. It does not know the difference between an actual experience in your life that creates an emotion and an emotion that you create by thought alone. So when the person gets caught in the loop, the body, as the unconscious mind, is believing it's living in the same past experience 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. To the body's being tormented because it believes it's in the same past experience all the time. And the repetition of that cycle keeps signaling the same gene in the same way. And sooner or later, the gene begins to wear out and the body begins to break down. So if how you think and how you feel creates your state of being, that thoughts are the language of the brain and feelings are the language of the body, and how you think and how you feel creates your state of being, then it would make sense that if you're thinking thoughts of self-depreciation, of unworthiness, and you begin to feel unworthy, The moment you feel unworthy, your brain is monitoring how the body's feeling. It's going to generate more corresponding thoughts equal to how you feel, which is going to make more chemicals for you to feel unworthy, and then you're going to think more unworthy thoughts. And you do that enough times, and someone's going to say to you, "What's wrong?" And you're going to say, "I am unworthy." And when you command "I am" as a statement, you are commanding your mind and body to a destiny. And the cycle of thinking and feeling over time that conditions the body to become the mind means then to change is to be greater than your body. Be greater than the circumstances that you've created biologically within you. So then, the body has been conditioned to be the mind emotionally, then the body's in the past, and the servant has become the master. And most people think they're making choices with their conscious mind, but they're not. They're making choices with their body to reaffirm some emotion that's become part of their identity. And Scientific American, prestigious magazine, last year said that when you talk about your past, 50% of it isn't even the truth, that you make it up. That memory is creative. And people tell the story of their past, the narrative, just to create the emotions and fire and wire the same circuits so they can reaffirm their identity. So then, in order for you to change then, and become conscious of your unconscious thoughts, the moment you become aware of your automatic behaviors and emotions, and if you're observing them, it means you're no longer the program now, you're the consciousness observing that state of mind and body, and you begin to objectify your subjective self. And because of the size of the frontal lobe, the crowning achievement of the human being, 40% of your entire brain, you can begin to pay attention to who you've been and modify your behaviors to do a better job in life. And so then think about this. If you went to a wedding and you had 2 shots of tequila, just making this up, of course, and then, you had a little white wine and champagne, and then you sat down at dinner and you had 2 big glasses of red wine, and all of a sudden the music started playing and it was thumping. And you got out there and you did your thing, and you bit your bottom lip and you kicked your shoes off and you threw yourself around on the dance floor, and they were videotaping the wedding, and you went in there and bumped a little bit and you did your whole thing, and then they posted the wedding on the internet, and you observed yourself. Do you think maybe the next time you might bring it in a little bit or become a little bit more aware of what you've done? That's called evolution. You can observe yourself in the same way. So then the moment you become conscious of those unconscious states of mind and body, now you know where you are and where you need to go. And crossing the river of change, going from the old self to the new self, the hardest part about change is not making the same choice as you did the day before. The moment you say, "Oh my God, I've been a victim, I've been complaining and blaming and making excuses and feeling sorry for myself and talking about other people," and all of a sudden you observe yourself doing that, and you say, "Okay, I'm going to stop." And the first 2 hours of your day goes really well. But the body now has been conditioned to be the mind, and it's craving those chemicals of suffering because you've conditioned it that way. It's modified its receptor sites, and it's wanting that familiar feeling. And all of a sudden, you're not creating those thoughts, behaviors, and emotions, and you break that chemical continuity. And the body starts sending signals back to your brain, influencing your thoughts. And the next thing you know, you start to hear these voices in your head. It sounds something like this. "Why don't you start tomorrow? Tomorrow's such a better day. It's raining outside. You broke a fingernail, your day is ruined. It's your mother's fault for sure. No, it's your ex-husband's fault. That's why you are this way. No, there's something wrong with me. I think there's maybe something wrong with me. I need to see a therapist. No. This doesn't feel right. What feels right is to suffer. And if you respond to that thought as if it's true, that thought will lead to the same choice, which will lead to the same behaviors, which will create the same experience, which will produce the same emotions, and then you'll say, this feels right. But in fact, it feels familiar. And the moment you decide to modify yourself and you make a different choice, you just stepped into that river. And get ready, because it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to feel unfamiliar. There's going to be some uncertainty, and you're not going to be able to predict the next moment. And going from the old self to the new self and crossing that river, you are stepping into the unknown. You're stepping into that void. And that void is the biological, the neurological, the chemical, the hormonal, and the genetic death of the old self. And people say to me all the time, Dr. Joe, I'm in the unknown, I can't predict my future. And I always tell them the same thing. The best way to predict your future is to create it. Not from the known, but from the unknown. What thoughts do you want to fire and wire in your brain? What behaviors can you demonstrate in one day, in one lifetime? And can you begin to rehearse those behaviors and install the circuitry in your brain? That hardware, if you keep doing it, becomes a software program, and you'll begin to think within those circuits. Now, here's the most important part. Can you teach your body emotionally what that future will feel like ahead of the actual event? Now, to the materialists, they would say, well, why would I give thanks if it hasn't happened yet? Why would I feel this way if the experience hasn't occurred? But if the experience from the environment produces an emotion, and it's the environment that signals the gene, and you understand that when you create an elevated emotion with a clear intention, you're signaling the gene to make a new protein to prepare the body for the event, biologically, neurologically, energetically, then you won't wait for your wholeness, your healing, to feel wholeness. You won't wait for your abundance to feel wealth. You won't wait for your success to feel empowerment. You won't wait for your new relationship to feel love. You won't wait for the mystical moment to feel awe. That's the old model of reality of cause and effect. Waiting for something outside of you to change how you feel inside of you. The moment you feel differently inside of you, you pay attention to whatever caused it outside of you. That's Newtonian physics, the predictable. But the quantum model of reality is about causing effect. And that means the moment you start feeling whole, you begin to heal. The moment you start feeling empowered, you're headed for your success. The moment you're in awe with life, and the moment you're going to have a mystical experience. The moment you feel so worthy to receive, your abundance begins. The moment you're in love with yourself and in love with life, you will create an equal. And the moment you're in a state of gratitude, your new job or your new event or your new possibility comes, and that's causing an effect. And so most people reach a point where they're brought to such a lowest level that they can observe themselves because they don't feel like themselves. But you can combine a clear intention, a vision of the future, with an elevated emotion. And when you combine those two things, your brain and body just move from living in the past to living in the future. And if you do that properly every single day, you will cross that river. And when you cross that river and you arrive at the other side, there will be new experiences, new opportunities, and new events for you to walk into. When you combine that clear intention with an elevated emotion and you're in an elevated state, you can look at yourself, the old self, from an elevated state instead of a limited state. And I tell people all the time that either you're going to be defined by a vision of the future or the memories of the past. And when you stop creating a future, it just means you're more in love with your past than you are with your future. That's it. And it's so much easier to lose sight of a vision or a memory of the future than it is to review the past. And so then, think about this. The biggest reason that people give up on their vision their dreams, is because of the hormones of stress. And stress is when your brain and body are knocked out of homeostasis. Stress is when your brain and body are knocked out of balance. The stress response is what your body innately does to return itself back to order. You have three types of stress. You have physical stress, like trauma, accidents, injuries, falls. You have chemical stress, like flus and viruses and bacteria, blood sugar levels, hormones, hangovers. And then you have emotional stress, like single parenting, second mortgages, 401ks, family tragedies, kids, finances. And all of those things knock your brain and body out of balance. Now, all organisms in nature can tolerate short-term stress. The deer in the woods that gets chased by a pack of coyotes, the moment the deer sees that external stimulation, it turns on a primitive nervous system called the fight or flight nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, and it mobilizes enormous amounts of energy to prepare itself for that threat in the environment. And if the deer outruns the coyotes, 15 minutes later it goes back to grazing and the event is over. It returns back to homeostasis. Short-term stress, we can all tolerate that. But human beings are a little different because they could have a confrontation with a coworker or their boss, and they can perceive that boss as a predator. And what was once highly adaptive now becomes very maladaptive. Because when you turn on the stress response and you can't turn it off, now you're headed for disease. Because no organism can live in emergency mode for extended periods of time. And it's a scientific fact that most people in the Western world spend 70% of their time living in survival, living in stress. And if you keep mobilizing all of this energy for some threat in your external environment, there's no energy in your internal environment for growth and repair. There's no energy for long-term building projects. You've tapped the reserve, and the immune system becomes compromised, and the body breaks down. But human beings, because of the size of the neocortex, can turn on the stress response just by thought alone. You can think about some future worst-case scenario in your mind, and you can attend to it to the exclusion of everything else and make it real. Or you can unfold the past bitter memory that's tattooed in the recesses of your gray matter and bring it to life, and your body experiences the same chemicals. So then, if it's a scientific fact that the hormones of stress downregulate genes that create disease, and I just said you can turn on the stress response just by thought alone, that means that your thoughts can literally make you sick. So if your thoughts can make you sick, is it possible that your thoughts can make you well? Poke the person next to you, please. Now, those hormones of stress are highly addictive. They give the brain and body a rush of energy. And people begin to use the conditions and problems in their life to reaffirm their emotional addiction. So then, if you're using the conditions in your external environment to reaffirm your addiction emotionally, that means you can become addicted to the life you don't even like. And if you can turn on the stress response just by thought alone, and the stress chemicals are addictive, you can become addicted to your own thoughts as well. And this is why change is so hard. And so when you begin to react to something or someone, we've measured this, you draw from this invisible field of vital energy and you turn it into chemistry. And the field around your body literally shrinks. And if you keep doing that, that vital life force diminishes and diminishes, and you have no energy for healing or no energy to create a new life, because you are now matter trying to change matter. And when you reach that point, you will always try to force the outcomes in your life, control the outcomes in your life, predict the outcomes in your life, and hold and cling on to things that you find important. Because the very hormones of stress cause us to become materialists, defining reality with our senses. And the rush of those chemicals cause us to believe that the outer world is more real than the inner world. And when an organism is being threatened and being chased in its environment, it only has a few options: run, hide, or fight. That's it. So if you're living by the hormones of stress every single day and your senses are heightened, it means then that you become more of your body. Because if you're being chased by a predator, you put your attention on your body and you got to take care of it. Your attention goes on the environment, the immediate environment, and your environment is made up of people, places, things, objects, pets, time. And then, of course, you're thinking about time. Where am I going to go and how much time do I have to get there? And people begin to fall into the illusion that they think they're their bodies. They think that there are their identities that's connected to people and objects and places. And they think that time is linear. And we become enslaved into this dimension. And over time, it's going to take time to get things that we want in our life, our goals or our dreams, because we are matter trying to change matter. And you have to drag your body through space to get what you want. Back and forth to work to pay for the house and the 30-year mortgage. We become enslaved to 3 dimensions. Now, that state of creation, you will no longer feel separate. And we've measured this many, many times. There comes a moment when you are truly in the present moment that I call the creative moment. That you are so present with whatever you're attending to that you forget that you have a body. You forget your identity. You forget about things and places and people and time. And in that elegant moment of the generous present moment, you become nobody. No one, no thing, no where, and no time. And in that moment, you become pure consciousness. And if you do that properly, you just walk through the door to the quantum field. Because you can't enter that place as a somebody. You go as a nobody. And if you are going to heal your body by thought alone, you got to get beyond your body. If you are going to change some aspect of your identity or your personality, you got to get beyond your personality and identity. If you are going to create something new in your life, you got to get beyond all the things that possess you, the places you have to go, and how much time you have to get there. Once you teach a person how to do this, they go from somebody to nobody to everybody. Isn't that the quantum field? From someone to no one to everyone. From something to nothing to everything. From somewhere to nowhere to everywhere. From some time to no time to every time. And now they have the ability to create. And so, amazing. We've seen this on functional brain scans when we've measured our students in the act of meditation. I can tell you right now, without a doubt, that you are at your absolute best when you get beyond yourself. I can tell you that when you live by the hormones of stress, you will narrow your focus on objects and things because that's where the danger is. And you'll shut your heart down and become selfish. That's what the chemicals do, because when you're under stress, you got to take care of yourself. And most people spend their entire lives closed down. And so in order to create, according to the quantum model, you have to lay down the very thing you used your whole life to get what you want for something greater to occur. And doing it properly, we've measured this. The person reaches that point where they surrender into the present moment, and we can predict when it's going to happen if their brain is hooked up. And all of a sudden, we start to see these downloads coming right into the nervous system. And the front of the brain starts synchronizing with the back of the brain. The right side of the brain is synchronizing with the left side of the brain. The brain is going into this psychic union, a whole brain state. When you live by the hormones of stress and you're trying to control and predict everything in your life, and you're shifting your attention to your husband or your wife or your coworker or your problems or the pets or the kids, or you start shifting your attention, your brain begins to activate different neurological networks. And when that occurs, your brain gets very incoherent. And when your brain is incoherent, you're incoherent. And when your brain isn't working right, you're not working right. But when you teach people how to take their attention off their body, their environment, and time, instead of narrow their focus, open their focus. We've measured it thousands of times. You're no longer thinking. You're no longer analyzing, and all of a sudden those different circuits in the brain that were subdivided begin to unify. They begin to synchronize. And what syncs in the brain links in the brain. And all the energy that's sitting in these lower centers moves right up into the heart. We've measured it over and over again. And all of a sudden the heart becomes coherent. Because when you're frustrated and you're impatient and you're angry and you're resentful, your heart is beating out of order. It's incoherent, just like the brain. The moment that energy hits the heart and you start feeling gratitude and feeling love and feeling freedom and inspiration, the heart starts beating in a rhythmic fashion. And like a drum, boom, boom, or dropping a pebble in water, it creates a measurable magnetic field. Now you're beginning to create energy around your body. You're going from particle to wave, from matter to energy. And you will no longer feel separate from objects and things. You'll start to feel connected to everything. And when that occurs, that measurable magnetic field can be up to 9 meters wide. And all energy is frequency. And all frequency carries information. And if you're able to sustain that elevated emotion, you're dropping pebble after pebble after pebble, and you are creating waves. And if you can feel deeply and profoundly, you're dropping stones, and it's creating a bigger wave. And that energy is frequency, and all frequency carries information. And when you lay the intent or the thought on that energy, the carrier wave, you're broadcasting a whole new electromagnetic signature. And whatever you broadcast into the field is your experiment with destiny. Because thoughts are the electrical charge in the quantum field, and feelings are the magnetic charge. And how you think and how you feel broadcasts an electromagnetic signature that influences every single atom in your life. The thought sends the signal out, feeling draws the event back. And in this elegant moment, when the brain is going into a whole brain state, and that energy hits the heart, we could walk around and look at that person whose brain's being scanned and their heart's being scanned, and there are tears of joy rolling down their face. They are connected to the divine. That intelligence that's giving them life, that's keeping their heart beating and digesting their food, that autonomic nervous system, the conscious mind has unified with it. And as they become nobody, no one, no thing, no where, and no time, their consciousness merges with the consciousness of the quantum field. An objective consciousness, a loving intelligence, an intelligent love. And when they come back to their senses, they take a piece of it with it. And they become more like it. More loving, it's a loving intelligence. More giving, it's a giver of life. More conscious, it's a consciousness. More mindful, it has an infinite mind. More willful, it has an amazing will. Its nature becomes their nature. Its mind becomes their mind. And they go from selfish to selfless because they feel so whole and so satisfied and so complete that it is impossible to want. How can you want when you're whole? And I call that the natural state of being. And that person is eclipsing with the divine. That self-organizing intelligence is moving through them. And it is the most familiar, unfamiliar feeling I've ever had in my life. And when you feel so whole that you no longer want anything, that's when the magic happens. Because you're no longer creating from polarity or duality or lack. You are it already. And that is our birthright. And all of a sudden now, the person takes their attention off the particle in quantum physics and puts it on the wave of possibility, and they begin to create. And they have a very clear intention because their brain is coherent. They combine it with an elevated emotion because energy moves into their heart, and we've measured it enough times. Their field around their body is broadened. We've seen it over and over again. If you have a community of 750 people in a room at an event and they're all doing it, the energy of the room goes up. We've measured that. We've measured the person's cortisol levels and their IgA levels. 120 people, they come to an event. We measure their stress hormones. As your stress hormones go up, your immune system goes down. So we measured IgA, immunoglobulin A, the primary defense against bacteria and viruses, better than any flu shot you'll ever take. And we said, okay, let's see what happens. We'll take a community of 120 people in this event, and we'll teach them how to open their heart and sustain gratitude and appreciation and care and kindness and love, just for 10 minutes, 2 or 3 times a day. Is it possible that their cortisol levels go down and their IgA levels go up? At the end of 5 days, their cortisol levels dropped 3 standard deviations, scientific history. Their IgA levels went from 51.5 to 83. Scientific history. They began to upregulate new genes in 5 days. They weren't a Buddhist monk. They weren't a nun with 40 years of devotion. They weren't a Kabbalistic rabbi. They weren't an academic. They weren't a scholar. They were a common person just like you. 10 minutes of gratitude every day is better than any flu shot. I measured it. So then when you begin to piece this together and realize that you have within your reach all the tools to begin to create the life you want, and you take time out of your busy life just for a period of time every single day to become familiar with your unconscious thoughts, become aware of your automatic behaviors, and notice, become conscious of your emotional states, that is exactly what the word meditation means, to become familiar with. And as you begin to think about a better way to think, and you fire and wire those circuits in your brain, and you begin to plan and rehearse how you're going to act in one day, one lifetime, if you do that properly, you begin to install the neurological hardware. And then the hardware over time becomes a software program. It'll begin to become familiar and easier for you. And if you can cultivate an elevated emotion every single day, keep combining it with a clear intention, sooner or later that elevated emotion is going to begin to become familiar to you. So the process of change is unlearning and relearning. It's breaking the habit of the old self and reinventing a new self. It's pruning synaptic connections in neuroscience and sprouting new connections. It's unfiring and unwiring and refiring and rewiring. It's unmemorizing emotions that are stored in your body and then reconditioning your body to a new mind and to a new emotion. It's deprogramming and reprogramming. It's losing your mind and creating a new one. It's changing your energy from the familiar past into an energy of a new future. And common people around the world are beginning to do this. And so I want to close by saying there's a concept in science that I love. It's called emergence. You ever see a group of birds all turning in the same direction in a big flock? I was just in Austin, Texas, and under this bridge, every night at sunset comes billions of bats, and they fly along the river for miles, all in this pattern. Or you see a group of fish all turning at the same time. That concept is called emergence. And in biology, when you study it, everybody thinks that there's some leader that all the other organisms are following, that it's like a top-down phenomenon. Turns out there's no leader. It's actually a bottom-up phenomenon. They're all leading. They're all connected as one mind, the one level of consciousness, and they're all behaving in the same way. Think about this. You and I have a stigma in our mind that if you lead with too much passion in your life, you're going to get it in the end. Whether you're Martin Luther King or John Lennon or Abraham Lincoln or Mahatma Gandhi, Joan of Arc, people don't want to live for the truth anymore because they're afraid they may have to die for it. But what if everybody's leading? Can't just take out everybody now, can you? The coming of this age is that a new consciousness has to emerge, and that you are the person that you're waiting for. And that if you're working on your fear and your anxiety, and someone else is working on their anger and bitterness, and everybody's overcoming themselves, and they're going from a limited state of consciousness to an elevated state of consciousness, and we're all behaving in altruistic ways, we create a new consciousness, and that new species of human beings emerges. We took a community of 750 people, and we had them elevate their energy. We had 70 people in the front row wearing heart rate monitors. And all they did in the front row was receive. Everybody else in the room sent the intent on that elevated emotion for the greatest good of those people wearing heart rate monitors. And 90% of those people all went into heart coherence at the exact same time, the exact same meditation, the exact same day. You see, we are bound by an invisible field of energy. It creates community. And it's those elevated emotions of gratitude and love that unifies us. And everything in the world is reminding us to become separate and selfish, causing us to feel lack and unworthy, prejudice or competitive. But when you overcome those emotional states that keep you anchored to the past, the side effect of that is called wisdom. And I can tell you from experience, when the unseen, when the magic starts happening in your life, and things start appearing out of nowhere because you created them from nowhere, or something appears out of nothing because you created it from nothing, and when it happens in no time because you created it in no time, and you say to yourself, is this odd or is it God? You will look back at your entire life and you will not want to change one thing in your past because it brought you to that present moment. And that's the moment the past no longer exists. And the emotion from that experience should inspire you to create your next experience. And that's called evolution.